Greetings everyone, Steve Wilkens, Golden Harvest Agronomy Manager. In this week's Agronomic Insight video series, we want to spend a little bit of time talking about a late season corn evaluation. As we head into the last leg of the race here with our corn crop, there's still a couple of things that we can learn about the crop from this year, items we want to gather so we can change for future years, and we need to start to monitor what's our harvest window going to look like. So as we head to the field, one of the first things that's on our mind is let's take a look at the plant. What is the plant telling us? And that can be in terms of our stand, our disease. We can still learn a few things about fertility, but primarily let's spend some time talking about late season stalks and also the last leg of grain fill. So let's talk a little bit about each of those individually. First, as you could see here in this hybrid, we pulled back our ears. Okay, and what this is telling me when I'm evaluating my hybrids is what was spring like. What I want to see with ear set is uniformity, all the ears on the same node, and good spacing. For the most part here with this hybrid, Golden Harvest G11 V76, we've done a really good job, okay? So I'm happy with that. The second thing I want to start to look at is what is the plant telling me in terms of my fertilizer, my fertility management. Now this gets a little bit tough as we head into the end of the season because the plants are going to start to senesce, but I do believe there are still a handful of things that we can learn. So for instance, as we're looking at this hybrid right here, we came across a leaf and it's showing us what we would term as textbook nitrogen deficiency, or in this case, nitrogen utilization. Because again, we are late in the year, but when I see this, I'm thinking to myself, I need to reevaluate maybe what my nitrogen program looks like. Okay, that leaf was below the ear leaf. If I come over to this plant, I'm starting to see the same thing in the upper canopy. Okay, so for this particular field and with a critical eye, I've got good plant health. I'm actually pretty pleased, but nitrogen in the back of my mind is something I potentially may want to evaluate. Another thing that we're seeing here is disease, or in this particular field, lack thereof, okay? Tar spot, we still see it across our the footprint of the business, and every one of us knows who deals with it. Tar spot's pretty unforgiving. As we get late into the season, even if we hit black layer, it'll still continue to work on our plant, and it can really reduce late season stand quality and harvestability. Northern, gray, all things that we need to keep in the back of our mind if we're going to go into corn next year or subsequent years as well. One of the primary things that I want to look at at this point in the season is as I walk through fields, I'm looking for what I call ghosted or dead plants, and I'll show you what I mean by that. This was a plant that we dug out, and you can see it's completely dead from top to bottom, ears hanging. This plant died early. There could be a multitude of reasons why. Primarily, when this happens, it's due to fusarium or crown rots, as I should say. So we'll take some time, we'll split this plant and look at it. But as you get into fields and if you start to see this, a premature type of plant death, you really got to be thinking and helping to understand why did that happen, and then set forth not just yield expectations, but also management as far as when you got to get this field combined and get the crop out. Ideally, we want our plants to be green all the way through. So something like this is definitely more ideal. This is what we want to strive for. This was going to give us our top end yield potential. You know, a lot of times when we're in this growth stage and we're heading into what's nearing black layer, a lot of growers and a lot of people think, you know, the crops, it is what it is, it's basically done. In a case like this where this plant died early, it's very simple to say that we've lost our top end yield potential. It's really important to note this stuff. Yield expectations need to be readjusted, okay? So that's a couple of other things to keep an eye on. One of the last things is we always have to be looking at our roots and our stalks, and more so at this point in time, stalks. So the push test is something that I highly recommend all of us do, and we'll do one here. What I like to do is take a subset of plants. We've got about 20 of them here. I just want to go down to the base, and I just want to give them a good push over and see when, you know, are they breaking? Are they coming back up? So we got one that broke there. But this is something that we want to do in multiple points of the field to help us really set our harvest window. Now, if we get into a situation where a lot of these plants are breaking and bending over, go to more spots in the field, really start to understand what's happening and why. So we're going to cut up or dig and cut some of these that broke and try to have an understanding of what happened here. So we've taken these two plants now and we've split them, and what we found is pretty much what we were expecting. In the plant that died early, and come down here and we can look at the pith and the stalk, and you can see that the crown down here was pretty dead, okay, and that caused, as the plant was filling the ear, we're just sucking all the nutrients out of the stalk into the ear, and we're left with a plant that died early and some pretty challenging late season stand establishment. Conversely, on this plant that's healthy and green, you can see that the crown is clean and healthy, the pith and the integrity of the plant is very, very good. And obviously this is gonna turn out and show us some pretty sizable yield differences. So we went ahead and we pulled the ears, and what we found on these two plants is remarkably different. And what's interesting too is it's not just the kernel count, it's also going to be grain fill. Late season standability is going to be key here. So every year we have situations where, unfortunately, it's been a tough growing season, and for most of us the past 3 weeks have been very, very hot. In a lot of cases these crops race to maturity quicker. I'd say some of them died down versus matured, and we're going to have some of these problems out there, so it's really important for us to get out and to understand it. One last thing, if we zoom back in here, the sins of planting, they haunt us all season long. And even here, as we're going to head into harvest season, we can still come down here and we can see our seed, our mesocotyl, and in turn, we can actually still tell what our planting depth was. And that's really important too, because if we have ear bounce, a lack of ear uniformity, that goes back in a lot of times to planting. And even again, late in the season here, we can still go back and we can look at that. So, to recap here, as we're heading into this tail end of the season, just remember, we're not out of the woods yet. There still is yield to be gained. There are still things that we need to do, probably not to management this year, but for management practices next year. But keep an eye on stalks, really understand what's happening and why. Make sure if you're seeing these ghosted dead plants, we're splitting them, understanding what happened. If you need help, talk to myself, one of your local agronomists, and we can help walk you through that. And then last but not least, let's use our Corn Tools app and let's start to look at what yield and stuff can be with our customers and our growers, and really start to showcase and get them excited about the fall. There's a lot of good corn out there. Certainly there's some challenges, but keep an eye on things, and we look forward to having a good harvest here. Thank you.